Games Workshop just dropped a long-awaited announcement for their best game. In this video, we're going to have a look at what the announcement actually says, what it means, and what 5 things could be coming in the future for the Middle Earth strategy battle game. So I've got Warhammer Community up in front of me here, and here it is. The road goes ever on. A look ahead to 2024 in the Middle Earth strategy battle game. So Rob is our point of contact from Middle Earth, and he has been teasing us recently. In Summer Games Workshop's announcement from the end of the year, they said they have some announcements that could ring out 2023. Now to me, that was 100% a Middle Earth announcement because it's Lord of the Rings, but it didn't come. And then just last week, Rob said in another post that they have major releases across all 3 IPs this year. But this article confirms that Middle Earth has big plans for us. So let's see what he actually says. Firstly, they're releasing a board game using some of the Middle Earth miniatures. Cool, I don't care, that's all right. And then they're doing made to orders, which they've been doing quite consistently for a little while now, where basically they just re-release some older sculpts that have previously been hard to find. It's been a really funny way to see people who are trying to scalp some of these old models get absolutely wrecked because the model comes back. That being said, they have some really strange choices. Now, looking at these models in front of me, Defenders of Helm's Deep is great, but all these models are actually quite common. Metal Armor on Horse is great, but the plastic armor on horse is fantastic as well, so it seems a little bit redundant. This is the one that really confuses me. This is Gambling on Horse without his banner. This guy's like the nichest side character, and in-game you always want to take his banner. So I'm like, is this really the best model to re-release? That's okay, because there's a heap of other good ones. Like this Rohan Captain is actually super rare. Bannermans are always nice. In this set, it's kind of one of the few sets where it's just like guys not fighting, they're just kind of chilling, which is really cool. And quite a few of these models are also really rare. But that's not the exciting part of this article. The exciting part of this article is this bit down here. It says, but that isn't all for 2024. We know things have been quiet recently, which is true, but we're delighted to say this year we'll be bringing the release of the next supplement for the Middle Earth strategy battle game. Fantastic. Now he says we do have to wait a little while, but trust that it will be well worth the wait. So the next supplement is announced. Now for those of you who don't know, the supplements are the Gondor at War, War in Rohan, Defense of the North. These books that basically expand the game. They don't change any of the core rules, it's not a new edition, but they generally add a couple profiles, a bunch of scenario play, and a couple legendary legions, which are just a more thematic way to play an army in a competitive sense. The next supplement is always a massive point of discussion, so let's continue that discussion right now. This list is going to be in order from least likely to most likely. We're going to start off with number 5, the one that I think is least likely to happen, but I think is actually worth talking about anyway. And number 5 is actually going to be the most controversial one on this list. So let's get into it straight away. Number 5 could be a Rings of Power themed supplement. Now, do I think this will happen? I think the chances of this happening are close to 0, but not quite 0. Now, a lot of people aren't a fan of the Rings of Power, which is completely fair enough. And it's a big departure from what we saw in the movies. The Numenorian armor style is completely different. Galadriel is a psycho. The Harfoots aren't really combatants, so it wouldn't really make sense to make an army out of them. The reason I think it's worth bringing up is because we know that Games Workshop has just signed a contract with Amazon to make a Warhammer 40,000 movie or TV show. Amazon obviously holds the license for the Rings of Power. So it makes sense that if there's a relationship between Amazon and Games Workshop, that some people could be concerned that they would do a Rings of Power supplement, but I just don't think it's likely. I don't think that the market will be there for it, and I don't think that the player base is that interested, and I also don't think that there's that much content to cover in the Rings of Power. All right, with that one out of the way, let's get into the ones that I think could actually happen. If you like this video and you want to support the channel and get some incredible terrain at the same time, then check out our newest Kickstarter, The Kingdom of Azragor. It's going out on the 30th of January 2024, and it's this awesome evil style terrain. And while you're there, you can get both of our previous Kickstarters, the Kingdom of Direct Deep and the Kingdom of Saxonia, at their original Kickstarter prices, which is a decent discount. All right, let's get back to the video. Now, number 4 is a Shadow and Flame supplement. This supplement could contain an expansion to the Khazad-dûm faction, legendary legions for the Khazad-dûm army list or dwarf-related army lists, and maybe expansions to Moria. Now, the reason I think this could happen is because the Shadow and Flame book has already been released in the past ages ago, many editions ago, and that's kind of what some of the newer supplements have been building on. Now, personally, I've painted up some of my Khazad-dûm army, and I've painted them really well, but I just can't win a game with them. They lose every single time, and I think that's why I want to see this supplement come to life. It's because I want my Khazad-dûm dwarves to be stronger than they are. Now, I know a lot of people win with them. I am not one of those people, unfortunately. What could this book contain? Well, I think that the Khazad-dûm army list, and I don't think this is too controversial of opinion, is really, really weak compared to a lot of other army lists. So I think this would be an opportunity to really spice them up a bit. I think that the Halls of Durin could be a legendary legion where all the dwarves could get something like +1 defense to represent their mithril armor. It'd take Khazad Guard up to defense 8, Dwarf Kings up to defense 9, Captains up to defense 9, and importantly Durin up to defense 10. I think that would be a really, really cool thing to see and a lot of fun to play around with. There also could be a legendary legion for Balin's expedition into Moria. This is kind of covered in the rules, but it's covered in a weird way that makes me feel like it was a legendary legion, where if you take Balin, you have the restrictions of a legendary legion, but you don't really get many of the benefits. This legendary legion would have to be led by Balin, and you would also take Floy, Ori, and, which one is it? Oin from Thorens' company. The reason that I don't think that Shadow and Flame is likely is because of the Moria side of it, the Goblin side, because they already have a legendary legion in the Quest of the Ringbearer book that's built around the Balrog, and the Balrog is Durin's Bane, so I'm not really sure what else they would do with Moria. Moria is also one of the most fleshed out factions. It has the most amount of units already, so I don't think they really need to expand on it. If they're going to make new models and new profiles, I'd rather them do it for a faction that doesn't have as many options as Moria. So that's why this one is 4th in the list. Now, 3rd place is one that's near and dear to my heart, and that is the Journey of Thorens' Company. This book would mainly be built around the narrative similar to the Quest of the Ringbearer. It would go through all of the missions that Thorens' company goes to up until the Battle of 5 Armies. The reason I think this is really likely is because it follows the exact same formula as the Quest of the Ringbearer. There's a lot of Thorens' company related scenarios that already exist that came out with the Hobbit movies, so it would make sense that they just get tweaked and put into a new book. Now, I am a massive lover of Thorens' company. I think they're so cool. I grew up as the movies were coming out, so I think that they've imprinted on me much more strongly than maybe some other people in the community. But I always want to play my Thorens' company, and the problem is I always lose with them. Not quite always, but it's really tough to get a win with them, and it's just not as fun to play an army when you go into a game expecting to lose. So I'd love to see Thorens' company somehow get a boost. Now, it doesn't need to be a legendary legion, because their army list already exists, but if it's an expansion to their army bonus or something to make them a little bit stronger, I think that would be fantastic. Now, what else this book would contain is a little bit contentious, because everything that Thorens' company encounters is just covered in the regular army list, so it doesn't necessarily need legendary legions, which I don't think is a problem. The one big thing that I would love to see come out in this book is Goblin Town Archers. We see Goblin Town Archers in the movies, but we never see them on the tabletop. They don't have rules. Now, having archers in Goblin Town would change the list quite a lot. It'd be hilarious to hoard out 120 models and have 40 goblin bows, but I think they definitely have to make sure they balance the profile. Maybe they make the profile just egregiously too expensive, so if you want to take 40 of them, you're at such a disadvantage for such poor shooting anyway, or have some other cool mechanic that somehow works with them. A legendary legion that I can imagine appearing in this book is a Defense of Laketown Legion. That would be Laketown Guard, Fili, Kili, Oin, Bofa, Legolas, Tariel, and that's it. Because currently that list is, particularly thematic. The exact thing happens in the movie. We see the Hunter Orcs attacking Laketown, and those are the characters that are left behind and have to fend them off. It's a theme that I personally have wanted to do for a little while, but because it's a yellow alliance between Mirkwood and Laketown, it doesn't work. So it's a perfect opportunity to patch that with the Legendary Legion. I don't think that this would be a massive release. I think it would be similar to the Scouring of the Shire in it just being smaller, but it's something that I would love to see. All right, we're up to the 2nd place on this list, so I think that this one is very likely, and if it doesn't happen this year, it will 100% happen in future years. And that is the Fall of Anor supplement. Anor was a northern kingdom of men that was destroyed by the Witch King. This faction exists in Middle Earth, and historically there was a Fall of Anor supplement. Now, I think it's very, very likely to be a future release because Anor is one of the least developed factions. Currently, it has 2 named heroes, a captain, Anor warriors, Rangers of Anor, and it can take Hobbit bowmen. So it has very, very limited options. I'm expecting in a Fall of Anor book that it would kind of get the Dunland treatment. By the Dunland treatment, what I mean is Dunland was kind of a sub-faction of Isengard where they had a captain, Dunland warriors, and Wildmen of Dunland, and a named character. And then in the War and Rohan book, they got expanded into a fully fledged faction, I guess. It's a legendary legion, but it's basically a faction, where they got 3 more named heroes, an elite troop, cavalry, and birds. So that is kind of a formula that I'm expecting to see repeated on Anor. What would they actually add? I'm not particularly sure. In the lore, I'm sure that there are plenty of other characters mentioned in Anor that could go into it, but it's not something that I've personally looked into a heap. I would also expect a more elite Anor troop, like a King's Guard or something like that, as well as a cavalry model. I think that would flesh out the faction. I'm not too sure exactly what they do with Anor to make it feel particularly different from the other factions. At the moment, Anor has terrible courage, but great stats everywhere else. So I think that they would definitely continue with that idea. But it'd be really interesting to see what kind of unique rules they come up with their cavalry to make them not just kind of rehashed Dol Amroth Knights or Minas Tirith Knights. On the evil side of this, Angmar is already a really well fleshed out faction and is already super powerful. But what I think they're going to do is create the Men of Khand Dûm. The Men of Khand Dûm were an evil faction of men that helped the Witch King destroy the Kingdom of Anor, and I think we could see them explored. Now, what that could look like is a couple named characters and maybe a single troop type named the Men of Khand Dûm, and they'd be similar to a Black Numenorean, but with some unique twists on them. That means there's one spot left. What is my top pick? Well, before I get into my top pick, please leave your thoughts on what I've said in the comments down below. This can be a huge topic for discussion. I want to hear exactly what you guys think. Do you think I'm an idiot? Maybe. But do you think my ideas are bad? Let me know, and let me know what I've left off this list, or of the 5 that I've chosen, which ones do you want to see the most? So my number 1 pick that I think is most likely to happen is the Battle of the Last Alliance. This book would contain the narrative scenarios of all the battles leading up to the fall of Sauron. We would get the battle in the Gorgoroth Plains, we would get the final battle, all of the other mini battles in between. But what I'm most excited in is what models could we see and what legendary legions could we see. Now the first model that I think is a 100% guarantee if they do the Last Alliance supplement is Anarion. Anarion was Isildur's brother, and when they created the current edition several years ago now, they teased us. In the Warrior of Numenor profile, it says if they're within 6 inches of Elendil, Isildur, or Anarion, they get resistant to magic. So they've already written his name in the rulebooks. He's already existing somewhere, so he 100% will be made into a model and a profile. I would also expect to see a new version of both Elendil and Gil-galad, where they're on foot and mounted. If they do these models right, they could seriously be some of the coolest models in Middle Earth. I'd also expect to see a new plastic Sauron model that lives up to his proper glory. The current Sauron model is cool, but let's be honest, everyone knows it could be cooler. I'd also expect them to come up with some named orc character that would go along Sauron just to help lead his armies. Another model that I think is possible but not likely is Orather. Man, I hope I got that name right. Thranduil's dad. He was the leader of the Mirkwood Elves at this time, and pretty much he ignores Gil-galad, full sends it, and dies. Not the most impressive performance from him, but I do think we could see him as a model. Now, in terms of Legendary Legions, obviously the Last Alliance Legendary Legion is the one that we care about the most, and there's a lot of discussion on what it would actually look like. Now, in the lore, we know that Tolkien said that all creatures were present at the Battle of the Last Alliance. But I don't think that that's the angle that they're going to take in the Legendary Legion. I think that if they make a Legendary Legion, it's very, very much going to be based on what we saw in the movies. You're going to have 4 named characters. Elendil, Isildur, Gil-galad, Elrond. Numenorean captains and elf captains will be your generic ones. And then you can take Warriors of Rivendell and Warriors of Numenor. So it's going to represent exactly what we saw on screen. And I think that all of the 4 characters are going to get some buff and synergy. For example, I think that when Elendil and Gil-galad are near each other, they're going to get some sort of buff. What that could be, I've got no idea, but I'm confident that that's a way that they would approach it. I also think that the Numenorians and the Elves would get synergies for fighting together because, you know, they came together as the Last Alliance. Alongside that, I'd also expect the Númenórean faction to get the same treatment that I was talking about with the Anor faction that happened with the Dunlin faction. Currently, Númenor is even more limited than Anor. Númenor has Elendil, Isildur, captains, and warriors of Númenor. Only 4 profiles, so it's super limited. I'd expect them to boost that out, add a couple, obviously adding Anarion, maybe another named character, although I don't think they will, but probably 2 more troop types. I would expect some elite troop and maybe some sort of cavalry. The cavalry I don't think would fit in the Legendary Legion though, because in the movie we only saw guys walking on foot. Will Barad-dûr get a Legendary Legion? Well, Barad-dûr's just an army, so I don't think they need it. Like the Barad-dûr army list already covers all of that, but I'm sure there's some way that they could squeeze it in, maybe a Siege of Barad-dûr list where they're the defenders of a castle. I'm not really sure. Let me know what you think. Anyway, this has been my exploration of Games Workshop's most recent announcement. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and I can't wait to play whatever new profiles come out on this channel sometime soon. Alright, thanks for watching.